The word soul in the Hebrew Bible, nephesh, psyche in modern Greek pronunciation, as we do, means life. Her life was departing, not her immortal soul. It is a fatal misunderstanding to read the word soul, nephesh, as immortal soul. It doesn't say anything about her immortal soul. In fact, souls are mortal. Every scholar really knows that. Every decent textbook knows that. There's the word for soul, nephesh. Her life was leaving her, drained out of her. She was dying. She died. What happens when you die? Guess what? You're dead. So, with your friends, you'll show them Ecclesiastes. The dead know nothing at all. The living know that they're going to die. Well, that's not so hard. We all know we're going to die. But the dead know nothing at all. Is that clear? Don't ever imagine that they're telling you the truth at a funeral service when you hear that so-and-so has died and now he's looking down from heaven. He's not. He's dead in Hades, Sheol, and he doesn't know anything. And in the 10th verse of that same Ecclesiastes 9, it says there's no knowledge, activity, or any praising of God going on in gravedom, the world of the dead. Please understand that the only way out of death in the Bible is via resurrection. In strict order, Paul said there in 1 Corinthians 15 beautifully that Jesus was the first to be resurrected to immortality. Yes, there were resurrections or resuscitations to life again in the Old Testament and the New, but Jesus is the only human being who has been resurrected to immortality. That's the incapacity ever to die again. Then Paul said, those who belong to Christ, that would be all the true believers, including Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, who were Christians, so to speak, before the time of Christ in advance, that resurrection of the true believers of all the ages is going to occur at the parousia. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, clearly, he laid out the battle order there. First Jesus, who is the first fruits of the harvest. Then those who belong to Messiah, all the true Christians, all the saints of all the ages will be resurrected from the dead at the second coming of Jesus, that wonderful word parousia that we're looking forward to. Is that clear or not? I hope you'll look at that very carefully and see there's nothing about immortal souls departing. She died. Well, if she died, that's what she did. She died, and she will come alive again at the future resurrection, which will be at the parousia.
Just to add my 2 cents here, I found this quote interesting from a Christian dogmatic book. Irenaeus, one of the early so-called church fathers, wanted to reject the Gnostic idea that at the end of this earthly life, when we die, the soul immediately ascends to its heavenly abode. As the early fathers fought the pagan idea, note the parallel with Gnostic idea and pagan idea, that a part of the human person, that is the nephesh, as you were saying, the soul, remember, God breathed into the dirt body that was to be Adam, and Adam became what? A living soul. Right? It wasn't a part of Adam, but the whole person of Adam. So that a part of the human person is simply mortal. So it's interesting that the early church fathers, many of them, fought this so-called Gnostic and obviously pagan idea that when we die, it's a part of us that goes. And also note that if you read the book of Kings and Chronicles, as some of you might know, every time a king died, Anthony, the king says, okay, now I go to lie down with my fathers in the dirt. Nowhere did any Hebrew say, oh, great, now I'm going to heaven to meet my aunt, whatever. So
that's fascinating. I'm so glad you brought that quote, because there's a similar one from Justin Martyr, also in the 2nd century AD, who believed in the millennial kingdom. He says this: if you meet people who say that when they die, their souls go to heaven, don't imagine they're Christians. That's from Justin Martyr. It's a wonderful quotation. Don't imagine it. Please do not imagine that the idea of going to heaven as a soul the moment you die, don't ever imagine that to be a Christian idea. It's a false Gnostic idea. How far we have departed then from the sound words not only of the Bible, but of those immediate successors to the apostles who knew full well that the nephesh, psyche is the Greek equivalent, that's not an immortal part of man. That's a pagan idea. So very politely then, request your pastors in churches to explain that to you, that the immortal soul, a person surviving and being alive and well, looking down from heaven currently before the resurrection, is a falsehood. It does not do you any good to believe what is false. Salvation, Paul said in 2 Thessalonians 2:10, is all about loving, not just in a passive way believing, but loving the truth in order to be saved. Those New Testament writers were impassioned that you don't want to believe stuff that's false. So if you're hearing people talk about the soul going to heaven when you die and the dead being conscious now, much less that the dead, and the fact that they are not being refined in a purgatory either, that would be the view of the Roman Catholic Church. That's also not true. No good lighting a candle to Mary. You're wasting your money because she's not even alive. The Roman Catholics devised a brand new idea that Mary, instead of dying, was taken to heaven. Well, that made a lot of money for people selling candles, I'm sure, but it's just false. Don't take my word for it. Check it out. Have a look at the conditional immortality idea, which is simply that all immortality in the future is conditional upon a future resurrection. That's going to happen at the parousia, the 1 second coming